Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with all of you, who are people that care and fight for the improvement of Brazilian education. Education is a great passion of mine. It has been present throughout my whole personal and professional trajectory. So during my basic education, I only attended public schools located in the outskirts, working class neighborhoods in São Paulo. So taking a technical course at that time was the goal of many of my classmates and a ticket out of that situation. My father, for example, is a metallurgist, and technical course led him to this career, even without having had the opportunity to finish elementary school. So I was the first one in my family to attend a public university. It was really hard, studying all the time. My family and friends thought I was kind of crazy because I was studying the whole time, even I spent a New Year's Eve studying. It was like a thing really difficult to get. And some of my friends thought that was not possible or totally impossible. I consider myself very fortunate to have had the opportunity to went to the University of São Paulo, USP, and my entire education and experience, especially the challenges I faced, were significant in shaping my decision to continue advocating for better education and create more opportunities to students. So in the education field, I started out as a teacher over 20 years ago, teaching chess. And later I taught in high school, vocational courses, and university. And my current professional activities are divided between school leadership and research. On school leadership, for the past 15 years, I have been working at SENAC's headquarters, coordinating educational projects, including curriculum design, course development, teacher training, and teaching materials. SENAC means National Service for Commercial Education. It is one of Brazil's largest institutions of technical vocational education and training, which from now on, I'll just call TVET. And here as a research, I have been working with teacher training and professional development of teachers, which was the subject of my master's and PhD research. And now I am a researcher at the Institute of Advanced Studies at USP. So with these dual roles, of working in the intersection between research and school leadership, I realized that this involvement has been an essential form of dialogue between academia and school. It's kind of a way to bridge this gap, from my perspective. So, in this work context, which involves direct interaction, fascinating teachers and students, I have been directly involved in several aspects of secondary and technical education, especially in the context of TVET expansion due to the government's goal of expanding offer and high school reform. This type of education presents many challenges, as Dave said, for schools, especially those without experience in TVET. There are many problems, and I have directly dealt with some that I consider urgent, such as implementation of the TVET track in high school, including curricular innovations, guidance for implementing the LIFE project, Projeto de Vida, that's now in BNCC in schools, and teacher training for vocational education, which is what I will be addressing today, considering many points provided from Professor David. Thank you. So, therefore, the idea here is to address the problem of teacher training for TVET as the shortage of qualified teaching staff has become one of the most important bottlenecks that hinder the expansion of vocational education in Brazil. So I will provide a brief context of technical and vocational high schools in Brazil, a historical overview of teacher training for TVET, lessons learned and the results of some research I conducted, and finally share some training needs and projects to address these questions. My idea is to have more like a conversation, so feel free to make any comments anytime. To start with, what do you know or think about vocational education in Brazil? I can go ahead. Well, now it's one of the 5 possible tracks of high school students. And I think this is a very important point about the expansion also of the.
Yeah, well, what I remember from the time I was in high school is that it was, it attracted mainly like high performance, low income kids who had an opportunity there to like follow through to either to university or some like industry job.
I have a comment about the future. So with AI threatening the lawyers, the doctors, the engineers, so the professions for the future maybe is plumber, electricians, because that will not be affected by artificial intelligence. And in Korea, they did that. They have so many engineers, they have to foment and incentivize people to do the technical things because there was nobody to do it anymore. So, keep in perspective.
Okay, no, perfect.
Eu fiz o curso de torneiro mecânico no Senai.
Presidente Adilson.
Exato. I was a very problematic kid. So going to Senai would be, oh no, a way to restrain my superactivity or something. So.
Okay.
Could be our president.
Yeah,
That president, still in there.
That is the plan. Yeah, it's the plan.
Denise, you can talk.
Okay, thank you, Fernanda, for the presentation. Well, I work with TVET in Ministry of Education in Brazil a long time ago, in the end of the 90s. And I worked at the Senai, the department, National Department of the Senai, for 6 years. And my background is similar with yours. We will already talk about that. But I didn't study in TVET education. But when I start to work in Senai with TVET, I changed my mind completely about it because it's not just because it's very difficult to do it because we don't have teachers trained to do it. So they have practical experiencing and how to teach. So usually the teachers were the best students of Senai had before. I think the same happens with Senai. I don't know about Senai, but maybe it's the same. And it's hard to recruit people from this. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It is the same problem you're facing there. So thank you for sharing. And well, it is important to define which type of TVET we are referring to. As I learned from Professor Canoy, based on a statement by Philip Foster, all education is vocational, secondary enough. It just depends on which vocation. So thinking about Brazilian education, Brazilian technical and vocational education and training encompasses initial and continued training courses, as well as postgraduate courses. But here I am emphasizing issues related to technical education at the secondary level, including an offer of TVET concurrent with high school, post-secondary, but especially integrated with high school. Especially the first one. Okay. So it is important to mention that when we talk about high school education and work, I want to highlight Article 205 of the Brazilian Constitution, which emphasizes the full development of the individual, their preparation for work, citizenship, and their qualification for work. So as well as Article 35 of the Brazilian Law of Education, which sets high school education as basic preparation for work and citizenship of the student to continue learning. In this sense, when secondary school is integrated with vocational education, it should provide the full development of the individual and not just professionalization. We must overcome the false dichotomy between the action of executing and the action of thinking. Moreover, we are aware of the problems related to high school education in Brazil, especially concerning the students who do not finish. The causes of dropping out of high school are many and are related to extra school factors and the quality of education, as well as the lack of meaning. I saw how the students were engaged in the training and the fun they were having in learning a trade. In many cases, technical education gives meaning to high school itself without opposing or even competing with academic education. So, with all these challenges, who is the vocational teacher? In general, the vocational teacher is a professional with experience and training in a specific area who works as a teacher, often without training to be a teacher. That is, they study to be an engineer, a nurse, but not to be a teacher. It is important to emphasize here the premise that teaching is a complex profession and, like any other profession, must be learned. We currently have a lack of qualified teaching staff, especially in an expanding scenario. These difficulties have come and gone history, where we have had public policies with on and off initiatives. And here I have got some selected points to illustrate the issue of teacher training for technical course over time. However, if anyone wants, I built a complete explanatory timeline that I share with you with the history of Tibet in Brazil, and I can share later if anyone wants. So, as a milestone here, we have the creation of this school, Escola de Aprendizes e Artifícios, in 1909. It was created with the explicit purpose of being directed towards the poor and unfortunate, but I think it's important to bring up more points, such as being an opportunity for those who do not attend school. Therefore, a form of school inclusion. Training for self-employed works as shoemakers, carpenters, and so on, as a way of recognizing professionals. The need to train teachers was a concern at that time, even given the creation of the Escola Normal de Artes de Ofícios, these schools in 1917. The purpose of this school was train vocational teachers and also train teachers of manual labor. Manual labors are sewing, hats. So, however, there's an interesting data that with over 5,000 enrollments in this school, only 7% completed the course. And of those who completed, 80% were women who were teachers of manual labor, which means that they could not achieve the goals of training vocational teachers, and the school closed a few years later. So another great initiative was here in 1946, when we had the constitution of the Brazilian American Commission on Industrial Education, which had a great influence on Brazilian vocational education. They introduced a training method that was integrated into the pedagogical practices of Senai, serving as a reference for a long time. However, this commission was dissolved in 1963. Here,
So just a question. This is part of the, it was related to the Department of State here, so it's really from the US government.
Yeah, US government and Brazilian government.
Brazilian.
Yeah, it was decreed with this commission.
It was Getúlio.
Yeah. Yeah. It was part of the industrial area, but era várias.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So after the Brazilian Law of Education in 1997, the Ordinance 2208 here separated vocational education and high school, which in practice meant that the degree requirement provided by the law for teachers did not apply anymore for TVET teachers. So the problem of teacher training was put back into the public debate with the decree 5154 in 2004. A few years later, we can see that this decree allowed the integration again of high school and TVET at the secondary level. Here in 2017, as you can see, with this high school reform, which is being widely debated now, we have technical education highlight again, as you said also. Given the new importance it gains as part of basic education. Also, you must think about the National Education Plan that was launched a few years before, and we have seen a trend up in the number of enrollments of vocational education, as we could also see a little bit in the speech of Leandro Barquim last week. So I won't go into the details of the proposal, but we have the TVET of one of the 5 tracks, the high school track, that in theory, students could choose to do. The new law included the figure of notorious knowledge, notório saber, as a possibility for hiring teachers for these tracks. This means that in practice, professionals with work experience in a certain area can be hired as teachers, even when they don't have any teaching qualifications, or even high school. So the major criticism here is that it precedes training, any training, including undergrad training. So I'm happy to talk more about the school reform and possibilities for TVET at the end of the presentation, if you guys also want to. And here to finish, in 2022, the resolution that established the guidelines for teacher training and TVET came into effect. In summary, this resolution brings standardization to this training, embracing several possibilities that already existed or were advocated by some sectors, including the fact that the universities can certify them as teachers, or even the possibility that a specialization, a lato sensu course, can be considered equivalent to a teaching license. Another point to highlight here in this resolution is in-service training. The institution now is responsible for it and must provide in-service training to professionals without a teaching license. But the text of the resolution doesn't give any criteria or explain what that means. Okay. So, and with this scenario, we can see a trend up in the number of enrollments into that, even with, though we are still far from the national plan goal. Today, around 9% of our young people are taking technical courses during secondary education, which is far from the OECD's mean of 38%. Research by state departments in Brazil and one also released by Itaú Social, which I was discussing here with Fernanda, shows that young people want to have access to vocational education, including their first option as a track. So I think this integrated offer represents an important opportunity for young people to access vocational high school, as it is generally one of the last public policies reached by them. So it's necessary to expand the offer of vocational course due to its importance to the personal and social development of young people and the country. Obviously, this expansion must be done with high quality and be connected to the aspiration of the students, labor market, and the future of work, as others said. Along with this trend up, we also have an increasing need for teachers, qualified teachers. So it's a great challenge, especially from an integrated course where we need teachers who put humanistic and technological knowledge into dialogue. It's okay?
Mm-hmm.
With this background, I'd like to briefly show the perception of teachers themselves regarding their education. For that, I brought the results of two studies I conducted. The first one refers to research of mine that was published, in which I worked with the narratives of vocational teachers, exploring their learning paths of teaching. But let's see here, I only discuss a few points from my study to illustrate this issue, but I'm happy to talk about later if you want to know more or even send the paper. During the interview, one of the questions was, what is your profession? The answer was, I am a landscaper, I am a radio broadcaster, I am a video editor, I am a cook, among others. But none of them identify themselves as teachers, and they work as teachers. Also, I asked for some comments about a sentence that it is in the beginning of an article I really like, called Those Who Understand Knowledge Grow in Teaching by Professor Schumann. The sentence is from George Bernard Shaw that says, he who can does, he who cannot teaches. And well, I received a lot of interesting answers, and some of them actually agreed with this statement. So we can see how they see themselves as teacher or not. And well, learning the professional of these teachers was based on references prior to the beginning of the career, the teaching career, and mainly on their own daily practice. They recognize the need to know more about the pedagogical, the didactic aspects to teach, as they believe that only specific knowledge is not enough to act as a teacher. The way of teaching is primarily based on how they learned. So I learned like this, I'm going to teach like this, but without knowing more about teaching techniques. They also emphasize the need for continuous pedagogical training, especially with a course focused on the area with real-life examples and not general pedagogical elements. Some strategies using in a nursery school, for example, are not so good for computer science. The second experience concerns the immense opportunity I had to conceive and implement a vocational high school course at SENAC. This course counts with effective educational integration, meaning that vocational training is incorporated in the areas of knowledge. In this project, I work with curriculum design, implementation of the proposal, teacher training, and on-site pedagogical support. The teacher training here was done 2 months before starting classes. We had amazing feedback from the teachers, and also a curious story. Some private super premium schools in São Paulo started to hire our teachers after this course. It was like, hey, if you need to hire some teachers, call the ones who work in Senac after the teacher training. So it was like, I see like a positive thing, you know, they're hiring my teachers, but it was good. So this photo is from the first class at São Miguel Paulista neighborhood in São Paulo. It has been a very positive experience and continues to expand with a great demand from students. We started in 2019 with 70 students, and now we have almost 8,000 students in this project. So yeah. So it is important to note that there is no selection process for enrollment, first come, first serve, which means we have a diverse classes. So, which is also a challenge for the teachers. And these students, they had an interesting performance on the Brazilian National High School exam called ENEM, with scores close to the average of the public technical schools. We analyzed in a study I have been working on with Rogério and Carla. This study began here, but has already shown that in São Paulo, for example, the 60 best public schools are all vocational schools. Well, during my routine with students and teachers at the school, I conduct postdoctoral research where I kept a diary for 1 year, observing the needs of teachers and students while considering training elements, distinctions in integrated course, and working conditions. Later, I analyzed the narratives of these teachers in the course, focused on the professional development and learning paths. In summary, initially they had difficulties adapting to the format organized by area of knowledge and not rather than by discipline. They expressed the need for more moments of integration between vocational teachers and teachers from the other areas. Also, they need to elaborate specific didactic materials since the integrated curriculum brings new perspectives, and we did. They also emphasized the need to understand the relationship of their profession with other areas such as natural science, social science, language, mathematics. But well, this is not about knowing everything, obviously, but about understanding the relationships. I am an enthusiast about vocational education. I think some of you know about that. It is something that I strongly believe in, to the point that without this enthusiasm, I would not be leading this project with almost 8,000 students. So I have seen the importance of the project and the difference that this type of course can make in the lives of students. I even convinced Carla to develop a technical course in data science, which we have done here. And it's a really good proposal. I will start maybe with my students next year also. And I think that to achieve this expansion, it must be done well and with quality. We need detailed implementation policies, involvement of people who really understand vocational education and training, and most importantly, qualified teachers. The quality and success of TVET depends on its teachers. With these studies I show you, I bring some reflections on the elements of training for vocational teachers, especially when working in high school. When comparing teachers who work in general education programs to those who work in vocational education, it is clear that the latter requires more skills and experience, TVET teachers must possess not only theoretical and practical knowledge and experience in the profession they teach, but they must also be well-versed in effective teaching techniques for students who typically have difficulty with academic study. As Professor Rachel Latan said to me, these teachers must know how to provide learning opportunities for the students. They need to value the knowledge and intelligence of work, as in the studies of Professor Mike Holmes and also Álvaro Vieira Pinto, a Brazilian philosopher. It's also necessary to recognize work as in its ontological dimension and to understand the work without naivety. They need to know more about the public, how to interact with families, which they were not used to considering only technical course, but now in high school course, they must understand this. Content knowledge and pedagogical content knowledge are also necessary considering professional didactics, focus on exploring techniques and instruments as in the studies of Pierre Pasquier. Dialogue and knowledge of the relationships between the technical field and other areas of knowledge are all essential. Continuous updating in the technical and pedagogical area are also necessary as part of professional practice, and identification and commitment as a teacher. With this in mind and valorizing the dialogue between school and university, I have been working on some projects in the research group of work and social practice at USP, aimed at contributing to the training of vocational teachers, such as these two examples. An innovative interdisciplinary degree program that focuses on work science, taking into account the appreciation of knowledge and the intelligence of work, among other aspects. And a research project that I am conducting with the aim of investigating into the specific needs of teachers who work in vocational high schools course. For this, we already have more than 400 schools who accepted to participate in this research, and I'm going to start next month. The idea here at the end of this study and map is to have more elements to develop detailed guidelines and training courses that meet the needs of the public, considering the different possibilities currently provided for in the legislation.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Addressing these issues, you need a collaborative interdisciplinary effort among educators, policymakers, and other stakeholders. So I think that by working together, we can ensure that vocational programs are of high quality, meet the needs of the labor market, and provide students with the skills and knowledge they need to succeed. And I can tell it works. With high quality, it works. So to finish, I would like to leave a message by a professor whom I admire and currently have the honor of working with, Francisco Cordel. In terms of vocational education, those who teach must know how to do it in the conditions of identifying and performing other ways of doing. Those who know how to do and want to teach must learn how to teach well. This means bringing together what you know, what you can do, and what is important for you so that you can handle both expected and unexpected challenges in today's complex world. And as Professor Schumann wisely said, inspired by Aristotle, in the end of the article I mentioned earlier, those who can do, those who understand, teach. That's it.
Before we open up for questions, I just want to say that was a spectacular presentation.
Okay.
You kept to time. The slides were excellent. They were complementary to the things you said. I think we can all learn from what Fernanda just did. I mean, it's really easy to give a bad presentation. This was a really good presentation. And I just really want to congratulate you for the work that you put into it to make it as good as it was. So thank you.